Have you ever thought about starting your own nonprofit organization? Do you know the steps it would take to begin one? Where do you start? What are some of the pros and cons? Well, if you're thinking about getting into the nonprofit game, this is the stream for you. I'm Suzette Speaks, a TV host and attorney out of Miami, Florida, and I welcome you to my channel. I have just the expert for you tonight. Her name is Tiffany Allen. She goes by Boss on a Budget. And what she does is coach people who are starting nonprofit organizations. So if you need to learn anything about where to begin, what is the process, what are some of the real advantages to starting one, and hopefully maybe even helping people in the process in terms of seeing your dreams of helping your community come true, you'd be surprised that you might actually be able to make a couple dollars too. So, we are going to discuss all things nonprofit tonight. Please hit the like button as you come in. I'm going to welcome you. If you're watching on Facebook, you know what to do. Hit the like button and welcome. I stream both on Facebook and on YouTube. So, if you are new to the channel, welcome. You know what to do. I love to have interesting conversations with very interesting people, and Tiffany Allen is one of them. Found her on Instagram, y'all. Straight up, we had a wonderful conversation, and she talked about her passion for really helping people, specifically Black people, but all people, build nonprofit companies. And if you are kind of afraid of the process, you wouldn't be the only one. But the process, although daunting and sometimes very overwhelming because you don't know where to begin, is something that she breaks all the way down. You can visit her at her website, Boss on a Budget. First of all, I like that title because I feel like I'm a boss on a budget. I constantly have to be. I was just telling her, can't get my hair done until almost Christmas because we got to be on the budget. And we have to make sure we're doing things that are aligned with both our intention, our purpose, as well as our wallet. So let's get into it. Let me say hello to a few people before we bring her up. Drop your location in the chat. Hey, Miss AKA Lady in the building. First of all, Patreon members, I know you're like, where has Sue been? I am going to probably drop a survey inside of my Patreon. And if you don't know what that is my members only group that gets exclusive content and conversations with me. And Miss AKA Lady is going to be my guest on, I think we're going to do it Sunday afternoon. So Patreon, look out for a message to find out what we'll be talking about. And I actually want your feedback first and foremost of what we'll be talking about on Sunday for our exclusive members only Patreon. But I'm glad you're here. Thank you so much for dropping by. RM in the building, one of my fantastic moderators. I see you, sis. Listen, Andrew Walker. I'm sorry, my little Jamaican accent sometimes come out. Sorry, okay? Right, Miami represent. But Andrew Walker, and I was about to say, y'all think I'm Jamaican, but I'm not Jamaican. Born there, bred here. But Andrew Walker, I was just saying to myself, maybe 2 days ago, I'm like, I have not seen Andrew. And I was wondering if everything was all good with you, brother. I hope you're good. New York in the building. Let me know something. I hope you're good. And I hope you can join us on the Patreon discussion coming up this weekend. It's good to have you, brother. I've missed you. I was looking out for you. Mars, Mitch, big up on the Facebook side, and everyone else. Team Replay, if you're watching, please hit the like button. Glad to have you here. Reese, the big red dragon from Philly. Always a pleasure having you, brother. And we're going to get started, y'all. I want to utilize her time very well. But Miss Tiffany Allen, as I said, has an amazing bio. I was just reading about her online. She has a fantastic website. You guys can see it in the descriptions. And I want you guys to check her out, especially if you are thinking about getting into the nonprofit space. It is not as, what should I say, daunting as some of you guys might feel, but it does take expertise, right? So oftentimes we want to get into something and sometimes we get over our heads a little and get, I know many people, put it like this, Miss Tiff, I know many people operating so-called nonprofits with no paperwork. Let's put it like that. And I get very nervous because when people think about, oh, I want to get involved with the state or the county or the city or whatever municipality you live in, the parish or town or however your local government is broken down, they don't have the paperwork or they're not ready to accept, certain types of contracts, certain types of business. So we're going to get into it. Let's not get the cart before the horse, but welcome everybody. Say hello, please. I see you watching. Hey, Eugene. Good to have you and welcome. We have a fantastic live coming up Saturday, Men and Money. I cannot wait to have Mr. Lindell Douglas on. He's a certified financial planner this Saturday. Can't wait to do some more heavy lifting. I'm just going to say rest in peace to Steven, Twitch boss. I was thinking about doing a show yesterday, but it was too heavy, honestly. Thought about coming on and talking a little bit about men and mental health and making room for our brothers. But I have had a long week and it's only Thursday. So we're going to hold off on some of that type of discussion for a later date. But without further ado, I want to bring up my very special guest. Thank you so much, y'all, for hitting the like button. Help me welcome now my guest of the hour, Miss Tiffany Allen from Boss on a Budget. Well, go on, Tiff.
Hello, how are you?
I'm fantastic. Good to have you, sis. We almost look like sisters. Hey. Look, I
I got
get
family everywhere. I got twins everywhere. That's what
you
people
know
tell
what I'm saying? People always want to say, Sue, you look just like your guest. Oh, we don't all look alike, but we do kind of favor tonight. But I want to welcome you, sis. Thank you for being here.
me. Thanks for
Um,
having me.
a pleasure. Yes, I was looking all over your page, girl, and got curious. And I'm so glad you said yes and that you're here and you want to teach. And that's what you do in real life is help support those of us who are going into the nonprofit game. So before we get into how you got into it, just introduce yourself to the people for me.
Hey, everybody. So I am Tiffany. I started Boss on a Budget because people need help starting their nonprofits. It's a hard space to navigate. And I wanted to teach people how to do it on their own, but not just start nonprofits, but raise money. Because it's one thing to start and do the paperwork, it's another thing to become financially sustainable. So I teach and I speak on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook all about how to start and how to raise money. So if you need help with that, make sure you visit my pages, like Suzette said. And once again, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm really excited, sis. They already okay. You got a fan. Okay, Reese. Thank you.
Oh, okay. All right.
We out here just having good conversations. But that's a warm welcome. Yes.
Okay.
We're here to talk a little bit about what you do. And I'm grateful again that you made time. So, how did you get into, first and foremost, the nonprofit teaching business? How did this become a passion for you?
I started my first nonprofit when I was in grad school, right? And so I did it as a school project and didn't realize like my experience there was going to help like inform what I'm doing so many years later. So that was like 2005, 2006. And fast forward, I helped an ex friend kind of launch his nonprofit and kind of navigate the space because he was trying to really get his name out there, but funding was sparse. Like he couldn't find the money to do all of that. So I, in trying to help him, was trying to navigate like, how do you get contracts with the city? Like, oh my gosh, his paperwork is due. I didn't know about this. And like fumbling through that process helped me realize like all the things that you can miss about nonprofits and all
Yeah,
the things like the state doesn't tell you or the IRS doesn't tell you. They act like you're just supposed to know.
right.
And fumbling through that process kind of inspired me to like want to teach others, to talk about my experience. And so I really started talking about grant writing. That's where I started because I'm a social worker. Um,
Awesome.
and I actually work for a consulting firm and we work a lot with national funders. And the way you get grant money is not the way you assume. They make a lot of
Mm,
back,
hmm.
behind the scenes deals. It's about relationships. So I started teaching on that. But then as I began to grow, I realized people need help starting. So like all a combination of all of that kind of led me to where I am now. Like all of those experiences helped me realize I need to help people get started because I have a lot of knowledge I can share.
I am so proud of you, sis. It's so hard sometimes to know where to begin in any business, really. At a firm, whether it's law firms or any other type of business, I think I forget who said it. I don't want to take credit for it, but I saw it online somewhere where a young lady, this is like in the 80s, an old talk show clip that says,
Mhm.
America is run by business, but no one teaches you how to run one.
Well,
So, in
well,
this
that's
kind
by
of
design.
pardon?
That's by design. But go
Yeah,
ahead.
exactly. By design, no, 100%. So everybody is kind of confused about it. We have these words like entrepreneurship that have become very, very popular and in vogue, and people are so excited and I want to be an entrepreneur, but do you? And how should you even get started? So tonight's open mic, y'all. Again, Miss Tiffany Allen from Boss on a Budget is here to discuss should you start a nonprofit? I know a lot of people in 2023 have been thinking about it, been, wondering if it's for them. And I'm glad you're here to kind of clarify a few things about this process. Hey, Brown Gal Peace Lounge in the building. Good to see you, sis. Thank you so much for being here. And for everybody watching again, Team Replay, hit the like button. Suzette Speaks along with Tiffany Allen, trying to understand what it takes to be in the nonprofit game and things that you should know. So, okay, so let's start with some pros and cons. So there are people that are going to say, nonprofit means you don't make no money. And I know that's incorrect, because I know people who are very, what should I say, not even, I wouldn't call it well off, but they're not scraping the bottom of the barrel, put it like that, who own nonprofits. And I think there's a misconception around that. So let's start with some pros. What are some of the things that you have seen while you have been coaching people who start nonprofits, specifically with an emphasis on Black-led nonprofits and helping them learn how to raise money? I think, again, starting it is one thing, raising money is a whole nother ball game. But before we get ahead of ourselves, what are some of the pros you would say to starting a nonprofit?
I think one of the biggest pros is that you have access to financial resources in a way that you wouldn't have as an individual. So I just want to say, because I think people have misconceptions about the Black community, that we don't give or we're not philanthropic, but we are. Like, that's our culture to give. We just don't give in certain ways. So like other cultures may have given, they're used to giving money, but a lot of us give by doing.
Time.
Or and giving money is all and that as well, or giving to church. Like, we are a very philanthropic community, but it doesn't always translate the same way across. But we do that kind of on an individual basis or a family basis. But as a nonprofit, you can do that at a bigger scale because you can leverage certain financial resources that you otherwise wouldn't have as an individual. So when you are a nonprofit corporation, you're actually a corporation, you're able to access money from other businesses, money from grant funders, money from the government in ways you couldn't do as an individual. So the impact you want to make in your community, you can multiply that because you have access to resources. I think the other big thing, which is kind of obvious, that if you are a nonprofit and you're federally tax exempt, and so for most of these people, that's 501c3 status. I know some of these words may throw you off, but if you have questions, please feel free to ask. But if you have 501c3 status, you don't have to pay tax on the income. And that's huge. Like, as a business owner, like, I got to pay all my taxes, right? But as a nonprofit, you don't have to pay tax on the money that you bring in, which gives you so much flexibility in doing the things that you can do for your community. But I also think just helping out, another pro that I would say is just being able to impact your community in a positive way. Like, being able to do that, like I said before, on a bigger scale, and to be able to impact people for a long period of time, having like that community legacy, I think is one of the biggest pros that I would think about too.
Awesome. So there's definitely a lot of upside. Of course, that tax exempt status is what people think about, I think, a lot. But yeah, having the ongoing legacy, as well as understanding the impact you can have. And I do think what you mentioned, that this idea that Black people don't give, I'm sorry, we do. We definitely have different economic circumstances depending on the city, the state, and all kinds of things. But we are definitely givers for sure. Many of us who are able to, are in the position to. So when we think about cons, because again, you coming from a place where you did a project on this, you helped someone out, a friend out, learning it, kind of trial and error. So you got to see, I guess, the ugly, good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you suggest someone start a nonprofit?
So this is huge, because one of the other reasons why I teach on Bossing a Budget is because I want them to know the reality of it all, and that it can be heavy having a nonprofit. It's a lot of responsibility. Yeah. I think the first thing you need to realize when you have a nonprofit is that you don't have ownership over the nonprofit. And this is one of the biggest things that trip people up, because a lot of times people, they start their nonprofits. This is my baby. This is my vision. I'm going to do this, right? And then you start talking about having a board, and your board can fire you, and they can set the vision and all of that. And then people get in their feelings.
Or boards that don't want to work.
Right.
You pick your friends.
Exactly. That's on my list. But But even like if you're making profit and you're making money, that money doesn't automatically come to you as a shareholder as if you were for profit. And you got to understand that, right? Because you want to make sure there are checks and balances, and you can't just start a nonprofit because you want another way to make money because it's tax exempt. Like
Right.
clearly that's the status that the government wants to protect, so that they're
Yeah,
making sure that there are checks and balances in place so you're not just doing it to enrich yourself. So I think the
absolutely.
biggest con, especially for people who care about ownership, who care about like their intellectual property, is that the things created under the nonprofit you don't own as an individual.
Belong to the nonprofit.
Yes, and the
Yeah.
nonprofit is a public organization. Like you don't have any ownership stake to it. So a
Yeah.
board member is as equal status to you, even if you're the founder, even if you started it. Okay.
Can I just tell you, I have a random, sorry, I wanted to jump in with this story. As you're talking, this reminded me of a person who I'm not friends with anymore.
Hmm.
But she had this vision to start a nonprofit. This is like 10 or more years ago.
Hmm.
And she approached me and was asking me to be on the board. Now, okay, you green, you this your girl, you gonna help her. Okay, fine. So we have a couple meetings on the phone, and I think both of the ladies were who wanted to start it were friends or had been in education together, yada yada yada. Long story short, I go over to a home-based meeting and I am asked to be the lawyer for the nonprofit. So I was
Mm.
like, well, I thought I was just gonna be a board member, but how y'all got it so that I'm gonna be, your chief legal officer. So she was just like, "Oh yeah, I was hoping that you can look up the stuff," and I was just like, "Do you guys understand how technical like you have to be with creating bylaws or writing all kinds of um, outlines for how this will work and the filings that you have to put forward?" I was like, "I know y'all didn't think I was gonna come over here for free." And be up here because you're my girl and just tell you how to do everything. It was the most shocking thing ever. And sometimes you don't understand. I guess I don't understand how other people think because you only know how you think. But
Yeah.
in my head, I was just like, sis, I'm gonna need you to do better. And I'm gonna need you not to try me like that. So it was the friendship basically ended after that. It was really rocky road because it was really like she expected me to like quote be there for her. But honey, this is business and you can't expect me to do all this work, filing all your official documents
Yeah.
and not be compensated. It was the weirdest thing. But I
Yeah.
think people sometimes again, they don't want to necessarily do the homework, don't know how to do the homework and think, oh, "Okay, I know a lawyer. Let me go ahead." And that happens to me all the time. "Oh, Sue is nice. Sue, you help me off?" No. No, actually I can't. Let me find someone who does that and I'll put you in contact. But yeah, it's a little daunting sometimes for people and I think they have the wrong idea of what it takes. Let me read a couple of comments. Hey guys, thank you so much. I see you in the chat. Last good man in Jersey. What up though? Good to have you, sir. Says, hey, what's up, Sue? I'm curious to know why Tiffany went nonprofit versus LLC. I'm in business for the bucks. How would you answer that?
So Tiffany doesn't have a nonprofit. So let me just clarify that.
Tiffany coaches people who have nonprofits. Okay,
Boston
cool.
Budget is a private corporation,
Mm,
and not an LLC. But I mean, if it were me, and I'm not a lawyer, okay, let me just say that. Let me give my disclaimer. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an accountant, but in my situation, if it were me, I would want both. Like, and there's nothing
mm.
holding you back from both. They both serve different purposes. Um, and it's a long-term dream of mine to do some charitable work, just not right now. So
Right.
just to clarify, I do not have a nonprofit. I help people start their nonprofits.
Awesome. All right. So it has to deal with whatever you want out of the business. And as she's outlining, hey, Mandrell, good to have you, sir. Hey, Dusto. Dusto's so crazy. See what Dusto wrote talking about? Where do you find these ladies with gleaming lights?
I
Praise
can't.
God. Praise God. We got a lot of folks interested in many things here, but we wanted to give you some background into where you could, start if you were thinking about nonprofits. I also think I went to a women's conference one time. It was a phenomenal one. It
Mhm.
was actually up in Palm Beach, the Office Depot women's conference. And
Oh,
there was a speaker this one year I went, this maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where she talked about the power of nonprofits. Older white woman, I cannot remember her name, but
mhm.
she also did similar to what you do, kind of
Mhm.
consulting when it comes to nonprofits. And her presentation, it was like a 30, maybe longer, 45-minute presentation about nonprofits and how profitable they could be. Now,
Mhm.
granted, we're not going to get into the what should I say, the weeds of how payment of CEOs are structured. I think the board has to outline that, or it has to be in your bylaws or something like this. And she kept talking about like these $1 million nonprofits and how, people can really become really successful in both their aim, to answer your question, the last good man in Jersey, of impacting, the issue, because nonprofits have to be built around an issue,
Mhm.
or a cause. And the government asks you, is it for scientific advancement? Is it for educational advancement? Is it for the arts? You kind
Yeah.
of have to know what lane you're going to be in. And but yeah, when she finished that, I said, oh, like, dang, should I just have a nonprofit right now? Because it was just so
That's how they get.
amazing, in terms of, again, there was money in it. Again, you might not be able to ching write your own check as a as a LLC owner, or some other type of owner might be able to. But she was just like, don't let the word deter you. So,
Mhm.
as RM says, hit the like button if you're enjoying the conversation. Doug in the building. How are you? Good to have you, my brother, one of my moderators. Hey, DL, nice to have you. What's good? Salute to the chat, says DL, saying, I really want to know podcast. Happy to see all of you. Again, just FYI, those on Patreon, we're going to do a Patreon exclusive with Miss AKA Lady this weekend. I think it's going to be Sunday. Good conversation. And I'm going to put a survey out on Patreon to see what direction y'all want us to go in on Sunday. But yes, we do a lot of different things over here on the Suzette Speaks show. Y'all also go check me out, please. I was on Roland Martin, Tiffany. I was on
Oh, okay.
Girl every Wednesday. I have a little spot now on a show called The Culture with Faraji Muhammad, and I'm like a contributor.
Congratulations.
Girl, I'm so excited. It makes me so happy. And so we had a great show yesterday, and it was fantastic. And we talked a little bit about everything. I think we covered like 10 topics. But y'all check it out on my community tab, and make sure you turn on your notifications so you know when I'm live. But yeah, good to see you, Doug. So I want to ask, so the cause is that, okay, so yay, looking forward to Miss AKA Lady. Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. We're kind of brainstorming right now. But Sunday afternoon, we'll be together in the Patreon, chilling and talking and having good conversation. All right. So we were talking about the drawbacks. And
Mm,
were there any other drawbacks that you wanted to
yeah,
emphasize?
absolutely.
Okay. The floor is yours, sis.
So I want to make sure you're clear, though, that it's a lot of work in
Yes.
terms of paperwork and requirements when it comes to having a nonprofit, because you have different layers. You have the IRS, and that's the federal level, and the requirements that they expect of you. And then you have the state. And I think a lot of people don't realize that the states regulate how your business runs. The IRS is more so concerned with how the money goes, but like how you operate, and your bylaws and things like that are largely governed by the states, and every state is different. So if you're starting your nonprofit or you're operating in one state, it may be completely different, the requirements that you have, the paperwork that you fill out, the fees that you pay, the annual reports, and then you got to report on your fundraising. So if you're asking people for money, in most states, you have to register to do that. You got to know the rules, know the laws, and adhere to that and pay your fees and all of that. And then if you're asking for money in other states, you got to know the other states' laws. It's kind of like sales tax,
Mm,
sales tax issue. So it's the same with fundraising. So it's a lot of things that you need to know. You need to know what you're getting into when you're starting a nonprofit. I'm not saying it's not doable, because when I, do my videos on my channel, I try to break it down as easy as possible. And I don't want people to feel like they can't if it's really like their passion or they have a vision. But you got to understand when you're going into this that it is a lot of work. You
yes.
need help. You absolutely do.
100%. Like I said, you cannot just call up your friend who's a lawyer and say, hey, can you do this for me?
Don't do
It
that.
takes a lot. And I'm glad you said that, because even within the state of Florida, and I'm not giving legal advice here, let me throw out my disclaimer. If you have a legal issue, you need to contact attorney directly. I cannot render any type of advice through this platform. It's for entertainment purposes only. But since we're talking a little bit about legal structure, y'all know that I can't answer any questions specifically, and you should seek the advice of counsel on a one-on-one basis. So here, just for entertainment purposes and informational purposes, you got to look at your state for sure. I know in the state of Florida, there are a couple of layers when it comes to the fundraising. I know they have to register for us. Department of Agriculture in
Yeah.
Florida regulates those things. And again, I know people who say they have nonprofits and they're not registered with Department of Agriculture who oversees it here and make sure people who are fundraising or charities are running the way they should. So, all right. So definitely lots of paperwork. So make sure you are dedicated and ready for the different layers, as you called it, of
Yeah.
paperwork, because you got a lot of filings and you got to make up a lot of documents too, meaning you have to create your bylaws, your board, recruit people to be within your organizations. It's not just you. It becomes almost like a team. And who you have on that board, I'll tell you again, I've seen it play out so many times. It's super important. It can't necessarily be your BFFs. I've seen it even just now recently. A lady I know has had to take
Mhm.
two of former best friend status people off her board,
Wow.
acting crazy, acting wild. So if I was like, no, this a lesson learned, I could kind of see it coming, but when you can't tell people this. So the personal relationships aside, you really have to be thoughtful and strategic with who you're placing on your board, because I've also had people wanting me to do motivational speeches for boards. Like, my board don't want to do anything, so can you come and talk to us and tell us what to do?
All
I'm
the
like, I'm gonna tell them go see Tiffany because I can't.
time.
I mean, I can motivate you, but they're gonna have to raise the money. They're gonna have to actually do the
Yeah.
work, like, or whatever it is that is required of them. So okay, so paperwork is a big drawback if you're not ready for it, if you don't have a coach, or if you're not prepared, right?
Yeah.
Okay, any other ones you want to mention?
I would just add that you gotta fundraise constantly. And I guess this is like the equivalent of marketing for business. Like you have to
Yeah.
always be marketing yourself. And I don't know if I would say it's a con, but I just think that people don't realize it going in. Like it takes a lot of work to fundraise. And you have options. Like you don't have to just rely on grants. You don't have to just rely on like donations from individuals, but it takes work and it takes a lot of time. And then you had to fundraise over here, but then you got to run the organization and then you got to manage the board and then you got to be the janitor and then you got to do your
Yeah,
programming. And then
listen, and buy the decorations for the fundraising gala
you
and print the programs and wait, design the programs to be printed and then
yeah.
get the ads to be placed. It's a lot. Even when I volunteer with different organizations, I'd be like, don't put me on the fundraising. I don't want to do anything to do because it's a lot. And
Yeah.
people, I'd rather write, if I couldn't afford it, write a check or at least get 10 of my friends
Hey,
to
well,
write
I
a check. We'll
I
buy we'll
understand
buy
that.
the $1,000 table, 10 for you, 100 for you, 100 for you, and we'll make it happen. But it can be overwhelming sometimes, and if you're not careful, you can be trying to recruit or ask the same group over and over to
Mhm.
be helping you fundraise, and you really have to think broadly.
Yeah.
So we're talking nonprofits. We want to know: do you want to start one? Is it important to have certain things under your belt before you start one? And we're going to get into that just now. Let's talk about some mistakes because I think people you have seen most definitely oftentimes go in blind, think, I just want to help the world. And it's like slap in the face, paperwork, slap in the face, taxes, slap in the
Yeah.
face, board members.
IRS
So,
letters.
hello, you don't want the IRS on you.
Mhm,
So, when it comes to the mistakes, say the top three mistakes you see people make, what would you say
mhm.
they are?
You already said one, which is huge, which I hear about it all the time. It is you're not recruiting a smart board from the beginning. And this is the mistake I see people do all the time. They have to fill out the paperwork and they're like, tag, I need board members. Okay, let me just put my mama, let me put my cousin, let me put my brother. And then they just feel like it's just a name that they have to do that. And then they
Oh,
realize in order to get the work done, they actually need help. Now, the reality is, if you're super new, you haven't done anything, it's going to be hard to attract board members. Like it takes time and effort to get people to want to come behind you, like believe in your vision and your mission. So sometimes you have to start with your family and your friends, but you have to move on from that pretty soon after because I've seen this example. Your mom's on the board. Your mom's acting crazy. She's pulling rank in the meetings. She's dragging things down, but it's your mom. So, are you going to like
Fire mommy.
Mom in front of everybody. Like, are you going to say something to mom? Or you get that weird dynamic, like you
Mama,
said.
we voted you off the board.
And mom is in her feelings. She don't want to invite you over for Christmas. You
No Christmas for
vote her
you.
out. So it becomes real. And do you really want those personal dynamics on your board when you're doing business? And that kind of stuff creeps in. Now, this isn't to say that you can't have your family participate, but they probably don't need to be on the board. Let me just say that. 9 times out of 10, you don't need to have family members on the board together. And the IRS doesn't like to see more than 50% of people related to each other and business with each other on the board. So you also have to be mindful of that. Like if y'all are affiliated with each other, then the decisions you are making for the nonprofit
It's
are
not necessarily
independent.
neutral or objective.
Yeah, so you also have to be mindful of that. And I don't think people don't realize that when they get started.
Everybody last name Williams. Everybody last name Williams on the board of directors, and they're like,
Yeah,
about that. Let me make sure y'all are doing actual work that you say you're doing. So it can
yeah,
raise red flags. So you definitely don't want that. So definitely picking smart or strategically picking
right.
board members. What else do you see as some of the preliminary mistakes that
Mm.
folks
I can't
don't
even
know
hold it
they're
in.
doing?
Like, I think the second one is when people get 501c3 status, they think that equals money. Like, as soon as I get the status, my level is unlocked and the money's going to start like flowing from the sky and we're going to be good. Or I got 501c3 status now. They told me I could get all this money. I'm just going to fill out for this grant and then they just expect it to come. And it does not work like that.
Mm,
Talk to any nonprofit founder, no one's going to tell you that happens. So you have to be strategic about how you're going to make money. Like you have to actually have a budget and think about how much you need to raise. You need to be clear about what you're raising the money for.
yep.
Like you need to have a clear message and a clear story about why you got started and why you need support. But people don't think through that because they think, well, all I have to say is that I'm charitable, I'm a nonprofit, and that's enough for people to give money to me. And
Nope.
that is not enough for
Here
people.
I am. Here I am. I'm ready for the money now.
I mean, just if somebody
No.
asks you for money, like you want to know details, right? Like you want to
Exactly.
know
How you
what you're
using
using
it,
it
what you gonna
for.
really be doing. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that kind of false idea sometimes that 501c3 uh, status is like the golden ticket, and that's definitely not the case. Okay, cool. Any other mistakes you see up front when people finally give you a call and say, "Help, help! What did I do wrong?"
I would say when they don't have goals in place. So a lot of people start their nonprofits, and this is no shade because I'm just gonna be honest. A lot of people contact me because they're in a bind; they don't know what to do. So this is no shade to those people. It's just it's part of the process. You learn and you move on and you grow and figure out how to do it. But a lot of people will start a nonprofit because they've always done like a coat drive or they've done like a back to school drive, and so they feel like in order to access money they need to create a nonprofit structure, but then they don't have like any plan. Like there's no 1 year plan, there's no strategic goals about how you want to grow. You haven't thought about, do I want this to be volunteer run, employee run? How big do we want to go? How much money do we need to operate? How many programs are we going to run? Like the real questions that you need to ask to start a business. People don't go through that because they just are so quick to get the paperwork done and get the status so they can get the money. So I think like if you're going to start your nonprofit, think about what you want it to be. What's your vision for how you want the business to operate? Because it is a business. You have to understand that it's a nonprofit business. Your mission is a little different because you have a charitable mission, but you still are a business. So I just want to remind people of that because I think people lose sight of that just because they're doing charitable work.
I hear you on that. Yeah. And that's a difficult thing, I think, with regular or not, LLCs and everything else. So
Yeah.
proprietorships in general is like the business, which I say knowledge or the business acumen of people sometimes lags behind their desire. So
Mm.
they're looking at something, and we just had an event down here over in Overtown, the historically Black Miami, where
Mhm.
I'm at, and yeah, I could definitely tell who had been able to kind of create events. That's another part of it, event planning.
Mhm.
For most nonprofits kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So who has been involved with that, how donors want to be treated, how events should run. It's night and day sometimes between how folks who own nonprofits operate. And I realize I'm not hating on them. It's really they have never ever ran nothing, or they just don't have the experience or the training. And so that business sense of like, yeah, your donors are actually like your customers still. So
Yeah.
how many times do you write them a letter? How many times do you send them an email? When
That's
they
right.
show up at your event, how is the presentation? How is the setup? It all matters. So
That's
I've
right.
seen people struggle with that for sure because they don't have a vision. They just know, I just want to help the homeless. I've been feeding homeless for 5 years. I'm gonna help the homeless. So let's talk about then, how do you know when a nonprofit is right for you?
Mhm. So I tell people this is always an individual decision, right? Because I can't tell, I can't give you advice about your tax situation and all of that. And this is a decision you have to make for yourself and honestly for what the legacy you want to leave in your life. But I would say, first of all, you've decided that you have the time to do this.
Mm,
Because I come across people who start just to start and then they let it lapse for 2 years. I just talked to somebody yesterday who said, she got started in 2020 and then she just let it fall to the wayside because she didn't
mm,
have time. So I would say the first thing is, do you really have time to do this? Because it's going to take time. Like this isn't something you can start and put to the side or it will just run by itself. Like you have
right,
to really think about how much time am I going to devote to this in terms of building relationships? It's a lot around like meeting people and making connections and doing the paperwork and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I think that's the first thing I would say. Like, do you have time to devote for this?
right.
I think also, like, when you start a nonprofit, you're starting it because you're addressing a problem. And it's similar to businesses. Like, you want to address a problem, you want to solve a problem. But if the problem is so urgent that only this nonprofit can address it, like you can't as an individual do much. Like you need something or someone to step in at a bigger scale. And I know that's kind of probably a little off from the question, but I do think it's important to say that like there's a gap right now in services being provided in our communities. And sometimes you are the right person to address it. And you may
Right.
not realize it. No one else is going to stand up and do it. No one else has your style. No one else has your perspective and your approach. And it's needed. Like we
I
don't
think
need.
it's the same thing like business. Are you solving a problem? If you're
Mhm,
solving a problem, you're going to have probably much more success than if you're just kind of there to take up space. So,
mhm,
absolutely looking for gaps. So, understanding how much time it's going to take and being realistic as to whether you have that time. And
mhm,
then also looking for a gap or need that needs to be fulfilled. And then that might actually provide you some leverage down the line, especially if there's not a lot of people doing it or servicing that need. People
mhm.
are going to be interested in what you're doing and building and creating so that you can meet that need. So that's a very important thing. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you would say someone should consider to understand whether starting a nonprofit is right for them?
I would just say, kind of building off what you said on the need, you just need to make sure that there is an actual need, that you're not
Mm,
just doing this because you want to do something good or
mm,
you had a good experience. And so now you feel like someone else should have the experience you had growing up because you experienced something. Is it really a need in your community? Is there really a demand for it? Because if it's
yeah,
not, it's going to be hard to get people to get behind you because you need people who believe in it.
right.
And people give to things they believe in, people give to things that they trust. And if they can't get behind it, then it's going to be hard to get support. So I would just add that piece, like make sure there's a need, make sure you've identified what that need is, talk to people, see what's happening in the community so you have the right message and you have clarity when you get started.
I love it. Y'all, we doing work. Hit the like button, y'all. We're doing work over here. Make sure you check out her channel. She actually has a YouTube channel and all her socials. I didn't even put this. You have a free guide. I forgot the checklist, a free startup checklist. I didn't put that in the description. I'm gonna go back and put that in the description
Okay.
because again, the purpose of us bringing you an expert like Tiffany is to understand. 2023. Everybody's building. Everybody wants to be, up there, and a lot of people want to do this. So without having to go through some of those same struggles that everybody else has already, you can kind of advance yourself and kind of shorten your learning curve by working alongside someone like her. So y'all check out her social media if you are interested in possibly wanting to begin a nonprofit. That's what she does. She helps people to figure out Let's start with, is it right for you? And then B, where do I begin? So we're going to talk a little bit more about it. I'm going to drop the link in just a little bit. Miss AKA Lady, yes, fundraising over time is difficult. Question: what is the most creative fundraising campaign you have come across?
I have to think about that one because I don't know if I've come across anything super creative. I just think that anything that appeals to your audience or your particular donor base matters. But I will say one of my favorite
Yes.
fundraising campaigns is the bottle filler. So sometimes people who fundraise, they'll have like, say, like you're supporting young mothers or mothers with young children, and they'll go around to different churches or different groups and have bottles and have people fill them up with cash, fill them
Or
up
coins.
with dollars and stuff like that. And then you basically have people competing against each other to raise the money on behalf of your organization. Now, people sometimes they get so competitive that they're more so worried about getting the money and
Ah,
being the best, they lose sight of like what the point of it all, but it still offer a good cause. But I think that's one of my favorite fundraising campaigns because it's simple and it's
right.
inexpensive. And the one thing I just want people to understand is you don't have to spend a lot of money to fundraise. You may need to, right?
Right.
But you don't
It
necessarily
depends.
have to for all the campaigns. You could do what I call peer to peer, which is just asking people to raise money on your behalf. And that is the cheapest of all. Like you
Yeah, that's why
don't
people like to know people. Oh,
yeah,
lawyers. Oh, yeah. So you know a bunch of lawyers. Can you bring them over here so we can ask them
yeah,
for money? It can be very difficult, but it's not. It's something that is doable, right?
yeah,
It's not something that hasn't been done before and is always being done. But you have to know your audience, know that the need exists. Doing something that people who are within your tribe kind of buy into. I know we see a lot of 5Ks. We've had people on who color runs and things like
yeah,
this, and just
yeah.
interesting stuff that might actually be fun as well as help the good cause that you are trying to address. Hey, Quincy, let's go West Coast in the building. Good to see you, brother. Signed TFA says, that's humbling, and I needed to hear that. Okay, well, we're doing work over here. I'm glad you're enjoying the convo. I'm here with Miss Tiffany Allen. She helps people who want to start a nonprofit kind of get there faster, get there more efficiently, get to the bag. And again, breaking down some of the do's and don'ts, some of the real issues and considerations you must keep in mind, excuse me, when you're ready to do this. So you can
Mhm.
check her out. She has her website is there, Boss on a Budget. So like, where do you start? So we're thinking about, okay, if you figure it out, it's the right fit. I want to do this. I'm gonna do this. How do you like? Where do you start? It seems like it's a lot of moving parts.
Well, it's kind of like two tracks. It's strategy wise, and then it's like administratively and paperwork. So let me focus on strategy. I would start talking to other nonprofits in your local community and start watching them. That's one of
Mm,
the first things that I would do before I filled out any piece of paperwork. I would look at how they move, how they talk, how they ask for money, and I would take notes.
yeah,
And I will look and see what they're doing well and what they're not doing well. Like you need to do your research, do your intel, and figure out, okay, how do I want to be? How do I want to show up in the marketplace when it's time for us to come out? Because you want to distinguish yourself, right? You want people to see that you're different, that you're new, and that they should pay attention to you. So that's one of the first things that I would do. And then the second thing I would do is pick an issue. I would pick an issue that either pisses people off, gets them energized, or get them passionate, and just start talking about it over and over and over again. And I would establish myself as the expert in that. Anytime someone's talking about anything remotely related to the issue or the people it impacts, I would show up and say, this is my take on it, right? Or I would write things on it, or I would start community chats or Facebook groups. Because what you're doing is you're basically building a community of people to get behind you. And people don't get behind nonprofits, they get behind causes, right? They get behind issues. So you want to get people fired up about the issue, about the cause. And so that no matter what you do, whether you start the nonprofit or you do something else, they're behind you. So I would start there in terms of the strategy because relationships and who you know matter. And you want to get to know as many people as possible who care just as much about your issue or about your cause. So that's kind of like the strategy side. But in terms of like paperwork and things like that, the process is pretty simple. Like you start with the state. Every state is different. You're gonna have to check with the Secretary of State's office, more than likely in your state. You're gonna have to, do a nonprofit structure. More than likely, it's a nonprofit corporation, but it may not. Again, I can't give you some specifics. I
Yeah,
feel like I
we're
got to
not
give
giving
you
legal advice here, folks.
right. But you start with the Secretary of State's office, and then you get your employer identification number with the IRS, and then you would apply for 501c3 status if that's the status that you want for your nonprofit. So that checklist that Suzette mentioned actually outlines the steps that you can kind of walk through to start your nonprofit. But those are like the very beginning steps that if I were starting, I would start there. Like I would think about strategy and how I want to get people fired up about this, but then I would also think about, okay, paperwork and all of that, because your next step is getting a board together and you guys making decisions together about when you're going to incorporate and who are the officers and when are you going to meet and what are your bylaws and voting all that stuff in. So what I just talked about kind of lays the framework, the groundwork for that.
I love it. We take the compliments, but we also take questions. If you guys are
Okay.
enjoying the conversation,
Thank you,
we
Quincy.
must be doing it tonight because
I
as
didn't
soon as
know.
everybody come in, we like, oh, okay, well, thank you. Did y'all have any questions also? Thank you. Appreciate you, brother. Thank you very much, Quincy. Are there any questions with regards to how to start? If you are thinking about starting one, this is the time because we are going to drop the link, or I have already dropped it. Look in the chat. It says call in, join the conversation. You can click on it. You don't have to show your face. Just flash it in the back so I can see that you're a human being. And then you can come up on the panel and ask Miss Tiff, Miss Tiffany Allen, your question. Again, visit her website. I will go back and I will add that free toolkit. She sent it to me on Insta, and I look back at it. I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't include that in the actual description of the videos, but I will put it back on Facebook as well as on YouTube, on the YouTube side. YouTube friends, hit the like button. If you're brand new, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you to all my new subs. And if you are a person that just wants to elevate and loves good and deep conversation, that is much more, what should I say, intelligence driven than gossip, this is the channel for you. I just like learning about, new things and new people from new people. And Tiffany is one of them tonight. Again, open mic. If you have any questions, that means you can come up or drop them in the chat if you don't want to be on a screen, and you don't have to be. You can, again, just, use your, what you say, icon and come on up. But if you have questions, now is the time. So definitely going to put that free starter kit checklist for people to check out. And I want to ask you about this board, because the board, we're not going to get into deepness about structure, but I think some people might be surprised to hear or not even be aware that this is a board driven type business entity. So when you make a board, can you tell me what the board does or how many people in general on the board? I know that can vary, but just talk about the function of a board when it comes to nonprofit, because we know you shouldn't have all your same, peoples on your board. And of course, there are officers as well. So can you just describe kind of just an overview-ish general way what that board looks like and what it does?
Okay. So your board is like your governing body. Like they are setting the strategic vision and agenda for your organization. If you're fully staffed as a nonprofit and you're fully established, there's usually you're distinguished between the staff and the board. The staff handle the day to day and make sure that the organization is running day to day. But the board is they look at the long term. They set that vision and they make sure that the organization is adhering to all the laws and the rules of the land. Like that is their responsibility. The buck stops with them. There are 3 duties. I know I'm live, so I hope I remember them off the top of my head. It's the duty of care, loyalty, and I knew it. I'm missing the other one. It's just because I'm live and I can't remember it. But there are 3 duties that board members are responsible for in making sure that the organization follows the rules of the land. But there are other responsibilities like maintaining the financial health of the organization, monitoring the position of the chief executive officer, which is the executive director, things like, making sure you do your audit, making sure you fulfill your IRS paperwork requirements, things like that. They just make sure that the organization is following the rules and making sure you're headed down the right path, right? So they kind of are the last stop when it comes to setting the rules for the organization. And that's why you'll see some news about CEOs getting kicked out from the boards, because I think people get really nervous when they hear that founders who become executive directors get kicked off of their nonprofits, and they're like, how can that happen? It was
I've
their
seen
idea.
that
They
happen in
started it.
regular companies as well.
Yeah. So it
That
happens
board is
because
serious, bro. So you got
they're
to be careful. So let me just back you up in terms of a startup context, though. So this is when you described as like a fully functioning over time 10, 15-year organization with staff and with a board. If you were just starting up, what is the function of your board? Always, it will include that oversight, making sure the business, as it is recognized by the state, is running and following the laws, both the bylaws of the organization, the laws of the state, and they have what's called, and it's a legal term, fiduciary duty, meaning they are the caretakers of the assets, the donations, things that go on, should be furthering the mission as stated in the mission statement, the vision statement, the bylaws of the organization. So it's a lot of responsibility, I know, but when you're just starting out, like I've seen so many people do, and they pick this board, what are some of the functions that the board has at that early stage?
So I'll just say I remember the last duty because it was an O, is
Ah,
duty, care, loyalty, and obedience. Those
there
are the
you go.
duties. Thank you. um, but usually as a startup, because you don't have the resources to have staff, then the board usually fulfills a role as a working board. So that means that they're doing the day-to-day activities, they're making sure things are happening and running and providing the oversight, right? And it's a really murky area because you got to do what you got to do.
It's a hands-on job, guys.
Yeah, you have to do the work. You have to make sure it happens. And look, if you're on a nonprofit board, you're not going to get paid for your service. I think that's another question that comes up for people. Can I pay my board members? No. In most circumstances, it's not appropriate to pay your board members if you're on a nonprofit. So people going in have to understand that they have to work and that this is something they're doing because they want to do it. They believe in the mission. It's not because they feel like they should get paid for it. So when you're recruiting people, make sure you're clear with them what their expectations are. Don't do what Suzette's ex-friend did.
Don't be deep-blowing people talking about, oh, by the way, can you be our lawyer? What in the world? Y'all wanted me to eat tea and crackers and cheese and talk about, can I write the bylaws? Yeah. Ma'am, take several seats. And I don't even want to embarrass you. I'm not gonna stay here for this. It was weird. Yeah. But people try to finesse. People they realize they're in over their heads. And they're like, oh, she can help me, but just be straight up. First and foremost, I would have told you this is not my expertise. But no. So working board is great. I've had over probably 10 plus years of board service, but I prefer civic board. I don't do fundraising. I don't really like being on nonprofit boards. I've been invited. And I'm like, no.
That's good though. You know your limits.
I like my civic boards. I will meet. You take up a lot of your time. Same way. You have monthly meetings. You set an agenda. You figure out what you're doing, whether it's for the county, the this, or that. I enjoy that type of work. But I don't see myself being on a nonprofit board for the fundraising aspect. I'm not. That's not my joy. There are boards that allow you to cut the check and just sit and do the meetings. I've done it. I've done it on domestic violence board, an organization down here. I served on that board. Was it 2 years? But again, it was I had to help form teams for 5Ks. I had to help, do walks and raffles and things like that. It was a lot. And I was using at the law firm I was working at the time. I was kind of like, okay, guys, I had to make a volunteer committee. I had to create all of this stuff to kind of meet my obligation. And I was like, this is a lot of work.
At least you did it because most people don't do it.
No, after that first year, they begged me. And I was like, they cannot get this again. They cannot get this again. It was a lot. So again, we're just trying to kind of give you guys context for what it's really like to run it.
I
Yeah, go
forgot to add one thing. Like if you're serving, especially on a startup board, you need to give money. I
ahead.
think this throws people off a lot.
They don't
Or
think
if
that's
founders
part of
don't
it.
want to ask, you need to tell people from the very beginning that they should be expected to give, because I say this all the time. If you don't give as the startup board, who else is going to give? Like, who
Yeah,
else is going to
no.
give to the
Cut the
organization?
check. Cut the
Yeah,
check. It is a part of it. And I think people are on, maybe because they're not familiar with nonprofits, they don't realize that's a part of what people are expecting, especially if it's a
yeah,
startup board. But you got to be very clear with those folks. Like the donation is 1,000 for the year. How, if you want to raise it, if you want to write your own check, if you
yeah,
want to come up with a fundraiser that raises us 1,000, that's my expectation. So
yeah,
you'll know for sure. Okay, with my schedule, with my obligations, can I do this?
yeah,
And oftentimes you might say, no, but I will come to your events and I'll donate that way, or I can give
yeah.
you $50, like whatever it is. You just that you can't try to bamboozle people onto your board. It's
No,
just too much. They play too pivotal of a role for you to
yeah.
think that. Oh, by the way, I mean, I'm telling you, I'm tired of having meetings with people, not often, but enough. A
Hmm.
couple, maybe two or three in the last, say, couple years, where the board ain't doing nothing and they're so
Yeah,
frustrated and they want help. And what can I do? I'm like, get rid of that board. I didn't want to say
yeah,
it, but I'm like, you're gonna have to start fresh. I know they're your homegirls or whatever, or they believed in you, but if they're not, meeting the expectation, we got to we got to move on. So yeah, sometimes it's hard to say those things, guys. I just want to give you an idea. Again, this is an overview. If you want um consultation, excuse me, with Miss Tiffany, you could do that. Check her out on our website. We have a few minutes here. Last call for the panel. Y'all shy? Anybody want to come and talk to us? You guys, the link has been dropped. But yeah, we're hopefully giving you a good idea as to what it takes to be a part of a nonprofit, to start one. If you're asked to be a part of a board, now you know. Don't get got like me a few years back. But I had a great question here. Thank you, Miss AKA Lady. And it was about accounting. Let's see. Are there accounting systems that are focused on nonprofits, or should the nonprofit operate like a profit? Sorry, financially.
like a for profit financially.
Okay.
So I think, so some people probably gonna be mad at me for saying this, but I think you need to operate like a for profit in that you need to be mindful of profit. Like you need to know that in order to survive, in order to be effective, you have to make money too. Some people get caught up in the non part of the nonprofit that they think like, oh, we can't be thinking about money, or we can't try to financially plan or try to have like a surplus. But if you think about any functioning business and you are a business, you have to have profit to survive, because you got to invest in your internal systems. You need to invest in your staff. You need to pay your staff well, and you can't do that without financial resources. So I'm kind of saying in a roundabout way, but you do need to operate like any other business. You do have some limitations as a nonprofit. Like the majority of your activities need to be focused on your stated mission, right? But you still have a lot of flexibility within that to be able to raise money different ways. You can sell a product or a service. You can, that's earned income. You can get grants, you can get donations, people can will things to you when they die. Like there are all different ways you can access it, but you're not limited just because you're a nonprofit. So I would say, yes, operate like you are a for profit business, but not like cutthroat, like profit only matters. You know, you're still charitable, right? That
Yeah.
matters. Your decisions have to be based on your mission, but you still can focus on making profit to survive.
I mean, when you plan, thank you for this question, Sign TFA. And again, and in the same vein where it says, do you have any suggestions for executing a 5K? Great
Mhm.
question. Listen, the budgets of each event or each fundraising effort needs to be, this is how much we're going to spend. This
Yes,
is how
ma'am.
much we're going to raise,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
that we have an operating budget, so that we have money throughout the year to fund the rest of our programs, ideas, and vision. So when you were creating this, you're going to do it for the organization for the year, each year, and
Mhm.
you're also going to do it for each, event or fundraising effort, because there's no way, it doesn't make any sense, down to your little league is not going to, sell M&Ms if it's
Mhm.
not going to get a certain amount of money. They have a goal in mind. So to this question, what would you say to this, Miss Tiff, when it comes to suggestions for a 5K?
I would say the same thing. Like my expertise isn't heavy on events, but I would absolutely say, like, especially when it comes to events, don't have events for the sake of having events. We love to like do things that where we can celebrate, we can have food, we can have the media and all of that kind of stuff, but it can be really expensive to put on things like that. So just be mindful of how much you want to spend and how much you plan to make, and make sure that what you plan to make obviously is more than what you plan to spend, so because you don't want to go under. A lot of people do this. They go under and they actually don't make any money with their events. And even though it looks like they're raising $20,000, $30,000, the event may cost more than that. So you don't want to put yourself in that position. And I would just say do everything as cheaply as possible. Get sponsors. That's about it.
Listen, I have emceed, and y'all tired of that, but I have emceed nonprofit stuff like crazy down here, and I have had where I have charged a fee, and I usually charge a fee for emceeing and hosting, and they're like, "Nope, we don't give that," and I'm like, "What you mean you don't give that? Didn't you invite me to come MC your stuff?" And they
Mhm.
would only, I remember this one nonprofit in particular was like, "We don't pay nobody," and I was like,
Mhm.
well, do y'all want me to host it or what y'all want me to do? And we did end up an in-kind donation for a table. I got a
Mhm.
table and I invited all my friends and we had a beautiful time. So it was like a kind of a ticket in-kind exchange.
Mhm.
But I still did it. I really believed in the nonprofit. It was an amazing event. I'm so glad I did it.
Mhm.
But and this is an established nonprofit, helping children for years. But yeah, they
Okay.
were very serious about theirs. They were like, in this particular fundraiser, we don't pay nobody. The
Mhm.
DJ, the decor, the table
Not
settings,
play.
every single thing you see right here is donated. So I'm gonna need
Mhm.
you to donate your time on that too. So I kind of felt some type of way at first, and I was like, everybody? And they were like, we don't pay for if it's down to they got like the people that did the AV and the mics and the nobody, no check was
Yeah,
cut to
because it's
anybody,
expensive.
and then they've got full profit off of,
Mhm.
I think it was like 1,000. I think it was over 1,000 people at
Mhm.
one of our big convention centers down here on the floor. They set it up
Mhm.
nice, beautiful. Everybody loves a gala down here. Galas are but again, y'all be dressing up real nice and spend up all that money. It didn't raise nothing. But like most
Yeah.
of our big nonprofits down here in Miami and in Broward, they always have a annual gala where tables are $1,000 or more, even 10,000 for corporate tables, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And like I said, they can be very serious about that point where we have to raise. So we're not gonna be up here with you trying to get your little fee, my little fee. I was like, okay, I'm gonna give you an in-kind letter, and then you can
Yeah.
give me a table, and then we can work it out. But they were dead serious, and I'm not mad at them because that's
Yeah.
how they yes, get sponsors. Yes,
Yes.
huge. Hey, 40 Boom, nice to see you. Glad you're here, y'all. We wrapping up. Hey, Mars Mitch, glad you're here. This is true, Miss AKA Lady. She adds, you
Yeah.
have to have strong organization to have a full event without any compensation. That's what's up. So that's why she's saying start on your social medias, galvanize people through where you are distributing information or showing up at places and taking in the sights and sounds, or you giving videos about what you're passionate about, so that you start to build that tribe, so that when
Mhm.
you need volunteers for A, volunteers for B. I know a gentleman who started a nonprofit, what is it, like a farm commune up in
Mhm.
North Florida. And I was just like, how many acres? And it is, people is on there every day on
Wow.
his property for free on an urban farm. And I was
Wow.
like, bruh. I was like, you don't pay none of them? And he was like, no, people got schedules like they're working at
Wow.
Starbucks around this thing. And they're so passionate about bringing, farming to urban communities, that he has his tribe, and them people show up. So it is possible, but you have to have that, that dynamic leadership and kind of clear vision. And we can't say, enough how much you have to share and share again and
Yeah.
share more marketing to the people that you're trying to reach, both to support and to hopefully serve. So we have a couple of questions left. If you have any more, put them in the chat. Last call for the panel. Yes, Veronique. She have an do you have a nonprofit too, sis? She was here. Oh my gosh. One of my first shows like a year ago. Good to see you,
Oh,
sis, on the Facebook side. Y'all go back. I gotta go maybe drop the link of what our show was so people can go back and look at it. But yes, we have some good content here on the Suzette Speaks Show. But we're going to wrap up with Miss Tiff. Thank you, Tiff. You have done an excellent job. So let me end with this. So, what are some of the must-haves? Okay, so people come to you. I had an idea. I want to help people. I want to change this world. And you know, we love to be. This is it, Miss AKA Lady. Genuine passion plus the gift of gab equal dollar. However, you know, we need some basics. So, where do people go wrong, or what should they have in place? What are some must-haves already so that they kind of start on the right foot on this journey?
I would say we talked about it, and I can't say it enough. You need a strong board or strong team around you to help push this vision forward. You cannot do this by yourself. And me saying that is not a reflection of your ability or your capacity. It's just impossible for you to scale in a certain way if it's just you. So you need to make sure you have a strong board and a strong team. But I also think you need to have a clear message. Why are you here? Right? Like, why is what you're doing important? Because people need to understand what you're doing to get behind it. Just like the example that Suzette said about like the importance of urban farming. That's the thing. Like, that's the thing that get people fired up. That's the thing that will make people come, show up, and work for free because they believe in that. They're not necessarily pushing the nonprofit. Like, what got them to move wasn't because they wanted to help a nonprofit. What got them to move was because they believe that, you know, clean or organic food should be accessible to everyone. So you got to figure out what is your key core message that you're going to shout from the mountaintops that everybody's going to get behind. And then I would just say the last thing is just a fired up community. Like, you need a community of people behind you, and you got to have the willingness and the boldness to stir people up, to meet people, and to get people organized. Like, you need that. You got to be your organization's mouthpiece, especially as the founder and the person pushing this. You need that. You need an organized, galvanized community, like Suzette said.
And Suzette ain't speaking, Tiffany speaking. Let's go. I enjoyed this so much. Thank you so much. I learned a lot, and I hope folks watching, tell us about, before you go, your YouTube channel, because a lot of great information is already up on YouTube, y'all, for the free. But I encourage you, again, set up a consult, ask her. Maybe she's right for you, maybe she's not, but just reaching out don't hurt. But talk about your YouTube channel real quick, doll, so they know what to expect when they subscribe.
Yes, when you come on over to Boss on a Budget and you subscribe and you give me my thanks and my super chats, I always appreciate it.
Exactly.
So you're going to see a love of teach. I love to teach. So you're going to see me break down topics all about startup and fundraising. That's really what I focus on, because I want people to really believe that they can do this and they can make it possible. So just about any question you may have in the startup space or how to raise startup funding, you're going to find the answers in those YouTube videos. I'm going to do some overviews, and then I'll also have like digital products to help you dig a little bit deeper. And I drop videos every Tuesday night. And I also go live on Sunday night. So if you want to drop on over Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can see me there as well.
Okay, we might have to do a little visitation, y'all. Go over and support her channel. Please sub. Thank you so much, Tiffany. If you guys enjoyed, support the stream by liking, commenting, and sharing. You can go back after we are done and leave a comment below so more people see the stream. I want to thank Miss Tiffany Allen. We know where to find you. Y'all go to her website. She's also on IG. It's called Boss on AB. AB is the IG, Boss on AB. As well as Boss on a Budget. You can .com, as you've seen throughout the show. We appreciate you. We want to support you, and thank you for all you're doing to build nonprofits, strong nonprofits in the Black community. Y'all, don't be ashamed to ask for help. I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly as well. And people trying to I'm like, I don't do that area of law. I can't help you. Like, you got to find somebody who's an expert. Y'all can also support my stream as well. Since she mentioned it, you know, the Cash App, $SuzetteSpeaks. For more exclusive content. Patreon this week will be featuring Miss AKA Lady. Can't wait to have her on. We'll be doing our live on Sunday. So I'm going to send over a quick survey to all my patrons. Thank you so very much, everybody who supports me over there. And kind of get some feedback on what y'all want us to talk about. We have an idea, but I figure Miss AKA Lady, it's easier just to ask what people want. Final comments in the chat. She says, this is a useful chat. Well, glad you think that's
Well,
all.
thank
I
you.
appreciate you. Last call, y'all. The back is now closed. Yes, Doug says, I was a part of a nonprofit years ago, the World Famous Lessons in Jazz series. Okay, fantastic. Don't take me not wanting necessarily to be on a nonprofit board as the example. I just don't have the time. And I know, again, it's a real commitment. That's why you find a lot of retirees, even, people who work part-time, even semi-retired people, they are perfect for some of these boards because they got all that time and they have good networks and they can cut a check, right? So sometimes you got to think out the box, out of your circle. But yes, please go over. Thank you, RM, for dropping it in the chat. Y'all have it also in the description, whether you're watching on Facebook or on YouTube. But I appreciate you guys. So many more comments, but I want to let her out in a very reasonable hour. Thank you, Miss Tiffany.
Thank
Hit
you.
the like button before leaving, y'all. Thank you for watching. I'll see you soon. Make sure you hit the notification bell if you're brand new. Welcome to the family. My speakers, I appreciate y'all watching and for spending time with us here tonight. Thanks for supporting the stream. Have a great night.
Bye.